all those vehicles are connected. So you get all those capabilities of fleet management, of sort of the same kind of things you would get on the retail side, plus all the things you care about as a fleet owner, whether you're, again, sort of running a repair shop or whatever. So imagine, in the future, when you have this API connected vehicle and you as what can you do now that you can actually program that thing? And, whether, there's some folks have talked about being able to use your vehicle and lease it out or rent it out and make it a robo-taxi rather than sitting 90% of the time in your driveway or at the parking lot. If it's programmable, then it doesn't have to sit around and wait for you, right? You come back. So what does that do? If you're a customer of our commercial solutions products, you will also have access optionally to the APIs there to get that data back, not just through a web interface, but also through APIs that integrate those with other tools that you may have as a fleet owner.
Welcome to this episode of the API Resilience Podcast. I'm Mark Winberry, Senior Director of U.S. Operations at Pronovix. I'm co-host of this podcast with Christophe Ventome, CEO of Pronovix Group. We're exploring the ways that API programs and digital transformation can make your business more resilient, and do so by inviting guests that are leading API programs to share their stories that hopefully will give you new insights to help you navigate the difficult business environment that we're currently in. I know that I'm not the only one probably ready for 2020 to end, but we've got to seize the opportunities we've got. I'm always excited to hear these stories, and I learn so much from our guests. And today I'm really pleased to have a chance to talk with a visionary leader in the API space. Today we have John Musser with us. John is Director of Cloud Platforms for Ford Autonomous Vehicles at Ford Motor Company. And previously, John was the founder and CEO of Programmable Web, and is the founder and CEO of API Science. So, John, thank you for being here today. It's really a pleasure to meet you.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for accepting the invite. And oh my God, you have such a radio voice.
I'm ready on that front. If nothing else.
It's even more now. Like I already remarked on it earlier, but yeah, great. It's going to be awesome to listen to your talking in next episode. Great. So thank you for coming aboard. And it was really great when you said like, okay, yeah, I'm up for this. Let's do this interview, because we've had some interaction with Ford in the past, like at the API the Docs community events. Mm-hmm. And from what we've seen, like it really looks like Ford is doing some pretty amazing things. And it's great to have you here to come and talk a little bit about what's happening, how you're approaching the whole API space, what you're looking at into the future. And I hope to dive into a couple of those topics in a coming episode.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and API the Docs is awesome too, right? And so actually one of the folks from our team was over there last year or the year before.
I think
in Chicago.
Yeah,
in
Darren
Chicago in 2019. That was my introduction to the API the Docs community and to this space. And Darren from Ford spoke and talked about metrics and the various things that Ford was doing, and just how many different spokes there were. And it was pretty exciting.
I've been telling a lot of people to go and watch the recordings of that talk, because it was just a lot of original thinking that I think you've been doing with your team. And it was just really inspiring. Just the ways of thinking about metrics, different types of metrics, and all the different things that you want to expose with an API. That was really, really exciting.
Yeah, and I could I can certainly give you some more background on that story at Ford. Overall the story of Ford is fascinating, right? I mean, I'm new to the automotive industry myself over the 3-ish years ago when I joined Ford. Personally, part of the reason I joined was because it's such a fascinating industry going through so much change right now, in every direction, right? Whether it's electrification, whether it's connectivity, whether it's self-driving cars, Tesla's doing, all this disruption going on. And so much of it now is driven by software, right? So it's becoming, cars are just big iPods on wheels. And so that's a great opportunity for making a difference. Of course, it's also a great API opportunity. And then you also add a great brand name, a trusted brand name like Ford. It's been a great place to be.
It must be really exciting to see how people are thinking about it. And as you said, it's like this convergence of massive disruption waves. Like any one of them would be able to topple an industry. Exactly. And they're like, it's like a superimposed tsunami coming at the industry.
Yeah. And I think, again, coming back to say, Darren's talk at API the Docs, or sort of what we're doing within Ford on the API and platform front. You can think about the industry as a whole, sort of the automotive industry moving from, UIOs, units in operation, which is kind of, how many cars did you sell, to thinking about, as we start to become more of a services business and more about, miles driven and retaining that engagement with the customer over the entire life cycle, so we don't just drop off the map once you buy the car and then we see you again in 3 to 5 years when you come to buy a new car, right? We're trying to change that dynamic. And so connectivity and software enable that, right? And then again, behind the scenes are the APIs, the platforms enabling ecosystems and all that stuff coming, whether you're talking about, APIs off the vehicle itself or APIs and platforms in the cloud. It's all part of that picture.
There's a lot of work, right? Because there's Internet of Things has been going on for quite a while, but there's been so many anti-patterns and anti-examples of what not to do. And it just feels like it's really hard to get this right. But you can't afford to get it wrong when you're talking about a big investment like a car. So it's interesting to see how the car industry or how the automotive industry is addressing all of this.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned IoT, because that is exactly what it is, right? So in some ways, almost the consummate IoT device, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Pardon the phrase, the Uber IoT, but because it's a meta IoT device, right? You're spending tens of thousands of dollars for the thing, but B, it's a device of devices, right? The core. I gave a talk last year in New York on software is eating your car. And, because what's happening is every piece of the car is becoming software enabled, and all those ECUs, all those electronic control units are proliferating within a car, whether it's, for your seats, or whether it's for the engine control, or, the windows, you name it, right? Those are all becoming software enabled, software driven. And then you have the telematics unit on the car that connects the car to the cloud. For example, right now, you cannot buy, certainly from Ford in North America, every car we sell is connected to the internet, right? They all come with a 4G modem by default, which again is taken for granted if you're buying something like a Tesla, but that's now true for us. And then we're going to do those same over-the-air updates, right? So your car can get better over time, and which in turn enables us to make improvements and make fixes, and that opportunity is vast for what that can mean, right? And again, trying to learn from those lessons of the IoT anti-patterns from the past, right? Making sure it's secure, right? Making sure it's reliable. Security is huge for automobiles, right? It's all about safety.
Yeah. And one of the things that I've been wondering about is, so everybody's, it's hard to hate on Tesla, and a lot of people are raving about it. But then I've also seen some reviews where they're and I don't want you to break down competition. I definitely don't want to go there. But I'm getting to a point. One of the things that I've been looking at, a little bit baffled, is the user interface, and it feels like there's been this switch to a digital interface as the default thing, but it feels like it's been narrowing down the experience. And I've been wondering if, and this is important because I think how we interface with information and digital devices is incredibly important and is only going to gain in importance. And I believe that this narrow interface, like just going through a screen or like limiting how you interact with your digital device, I don't think that's the right pattern to follow. And do you have a philosophy for that at Ford?
It goes back to a couple of things. First of all, again, within the car itself, within your in-car experience, digital's become much more important. I myself have on order one of the fantastic new Mach-E's. Have you seen that fully electric BEV, which is actually in production, is being released? You'll see it more in the press next month, I think, when they come off the assembly line. But I'm super excited to get that. It's an amazing car, right? It's the Mustang, taking that Mustang brand and then doubling down the performance, but in an electrification model, right? The car, it's a fantastic car. So, but that's got I think it's a 15-inch screen, as sort of the primary center console. But then it'll have another screen, sort of a digital cockpit in front of you behind the steering wheel. So again, to your point, that's all. And we have knobs. There's a great little dial right in the middle of the screen in that 15-inch screen, or physical knobs. So we're trying to find that balance between physical. People get very religious about buttons and knobs in cars versus all digital. That's a separate conversation. But beyond that, then we have millions of customers using the Ford Pass app, right? So that's your on your iOS or Android device using the Ford Pass app as a way to then manage your vehicle, your Ford one or multiple vehicles, and getting service and all the things that you can kind of have in your pocket, and then being able to use your phone as a key, right? Mm-hmm. So enabling that experience from your digital device. You can now use like your Alexa device or your other sort of digital assistant at home to say, you could say, Alexa, start my F-150 or start my car, right? And then through the magic of APIs, and that can go from your home device through the cloud over to your car, and then warm up your car in the driveway. Now it's getting to be the cold season, right? Yeah. And we see the usage of our customers doing more of that during the winter months, because they're going to make use of starting your car and getting it all ready in the driveway before you go out there in the morning. But again, that's an API-driven capability, which over time will become more accessible to partners and to others as we start to enable a broader ecosystem on top of that, right? So again, thinking about what could be that broader connectivity. When you bring your car home, should your car automatically open your garage door, right? Not just when you're within Bluetooth range, but beyond that, right?
Like geofencing.
Through geofencing, right? Or again, connecting to your media apps more holistically, right? Or right now, we actually have a service that we announced last year in 2019 with partnership with Amazon, right? So you, with the Amazon Key product, so you can have packages that you order on Amazon and have them delivered securely to the driver can then deliver to your trunk. Yeah. So instead of delivering to your home address, you can say, well, I'd like it delivered to my vehicle.
That's pretty cool.
And then it knows where your vehicle is. And again, this is all APIs under the covers. The Amazon driver will then know where your vehicle is, and they can come over and then pop the trunk on your vehicle, turn off the alarm, leave it in there, and then close it, and then turn the alarm back on, and then leave, and then you'll get a notification saying, hey, your package is now at your car. So you can have it delivered, whether for whatever reason you want to have it delivered there, you're at the office, wherever. Yeah. So these are all different use cases which become enabled. And then the last thing I'll throw in there is kind of that. I think we're all as owners of, most of us being owners of cars or having that experience, think of it as what in the automotive industry is the retail segment, but there's this huge commercial vehicle segment, right? And Ford is I think we have the lion's share of the commercial vehicle segment in North America or even globally. Fantastic. We were like the Ford Transit, right? The Transit vans, right? We made an announcement just last week that we were announcing of the launch of the E-Transit, which will be the first fully electric van. And that's super interesting and super important to our fleet customers, right? Whether you have a fleet of 10 vehicles or hundreds, imagine the cost savings, which I think they've estimated up to 40% over the lifetime of a vehicle, in terms of lower maintenance, lower cost of fueling, et cetera. On the one hand, with a fleet of vans or a fleet of F-150s as we start to do the hybrid and all electric F-150s, or larger vehicles again in our portfolio. But so that's the electrification piece. But then you got to think alongside that they're all connected.
Yeah.
Right. So all those vehicles are connected. So you get all those capabilities of fleet management, of sort of the same kind of things you would get on the retail side, plus all the things you care about as a fleet owner, whether you're, again, sort of running a repair shop or whatever. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think this is the thing that I'm really excited about, is because the vehicles are so close to so many people. I believe there's a whole lot of new affordances that are out there that we can go and discover for our existing vehicles, like this new, like the popping your trunk to deliver a package, or how do you manage your fleet? What are the new ways of using your vehicles as a fleet owner that become available to you because they're suddenly digitally enabled? Do you have a concerted program to go and discover new affordances, new ways of using your fleet or applications or things like that?
Yeah, we do, and there's a couple of flavors of that. So one is a group, it's less than 5 years old within Ford, called Ford Commercial Solutions, FCS, and they've that group, and we're sort of doubling down on that these days in terms of and our new CEO Jim Farley is really big on this, thinking about what it means to have a connected fleet, right, and what you can do with that. And so working closely with, say, again, one market that Ford has a lion's share of is the police vehicles, right? So the number one OEM in that market is Ford. So you'll see tons of Ford Explorers, for example, these days as being in the police fleet market. And so we've worked closely with them because they have unique needs. And so now that you have these connected police vehicles, that means a lot to that market. And so we work closely with them and applying much more of a agile and human-centered design philosophy, working very closely with those customers, closer than we ever did, to say, hey, not just the vehicle itself, but now the vehicle is a connected vehicle, and this API connected vehicle, what opportunities does that open up, right? I think, in essence of your question there. So that's that side of it. And then the group that I'm part of on a day-to-day basis here in the self-driving vehicle market, where the whole industry is moving longer term, we're building what we call transportation as a service, or TaaS, or mobility as a service, and thinking about, as you have the building blocks of ride hailing and package goods moving, connected vehicles, what does that mean, right? So for the near term, they're going to be driven vehicles, but longer term, they'll be self-driving vehicles. And so what does that mean, right? Because then you can really program the vehicle. Right? Imagine, in the future, when you have this API connected vehicle, and you as what can you do now that you can actually program that thing? And whether there's some folks have talked about being able to use your vehicle and lease it out or rent it out and make it a robo-taxi, rather than sitting 90% of the time in your driveway or at the parking lot. If it's programmable, then it doesn't have to sit around and wait for you, right? You come back. So what does that do?
I've got a couple of random questions. One is, as you're building this platform and working with connected cars, there's so much that you've mentioned that is just fantastic, and delivering unique functionality that wasn't there before. I'm wondering how much of that Ford wants to do itself, and how much of that are you exposing with partners, and how that's going to change? Because you mentioned the Amazon situation. Obviously, that's a cooperation between Ford and Amazon, and allows you to maintain the safety of the consumer at that point. But I think about all of the things that are happening with insurance apps, and I had teenage boys that I wanted to know how they're driving and to know that kind of thing. And there are apps and things like that to do that. So I'm wondering, how do you see this changing with a connected vehicle that provides a platform and has APIs? And which of those APIs you expose publicly and which of those stay private?
I understand your concern about new drivers with cars and all that that entails. And so that's a good example. And also the insurance piece as well, which is, we have along with, some partners, the UBI, usage-based or user-based insurance, right? And tying, now the vehicles have telematics, whether you get that either from a mobile device or from the vehicle itself, the potential for helping with new drivers or any driver, and sort of how can now the connected cars, can you potentially get, lower cost insurance based on, your driving itself. But I think, so I'll come back to your question about sort of the ecosystem and partnerships. I think within there, given that it's a highly regulated industry, that's a concern, and sort of that certainly dictates some of what any automotive manufacturer does. There's safety concerns, of course, way up there in terms of the safety of a connected vehicle and cybersecurity and all the things around that. And then last but not least in that bucket is privacy, right? So again, you have to be super careful about what is that your privacy, both as as a driver, where you go. Again, some highly confidential and PII information in there that would be naturally exposed through an API, right? So, for example, if you're talking about API specifically, we think very carefully about and taking very careful, measured steps as we sort of go forward to building an ecosystem and working with partners about those sorts of topics around privacy, safety, regulation. So, with that said, then we start to take these incremental steps of working with partners. We also, on the fleet side, for example, you can go look at what we're doing on the Ford Commercial Solutions side and see that we have, we're working with fleet owners, it could be, rental car agencies and others who want to be able to have access to do things like get telematics data back for both fleet management as well as, and we provide some of those as APIs, right? So those partners, if you're a customer of our commercial solutions products, you will also have access optionally to the APIs there to get that data back, not just through a web interface, but also through APIs that integrate those with other tools that you may have as a fleet owner, whether those are on the financial side or the operational side or the maintenance side. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah.
It sounds, when I'm looking at this space, like this is something I'm feeling with the whole API space, and this is connected to, like, there's this new wave of low no code applications, and like there's been attempts at this before, and there's this new wave of that. And I think when you try to apply that to APIs and how we get the power of APIs into the hands of regular people without development skills or developer skills, I wonder, it just feels like it's hard to see through this. There's so many different applications, and it's like, how do you even start managing this? How do you create a healthy program that has a good strategy for approaching this? Do you have you found any answers for that? I know that most of our customers are looking for this, because it's like one step is to get your APIs out there, and then it's a whole other thing to then actually get them used in good, successful ways that are creating enough value. You talked a little bit earlier about specific programs for specific applications. I think that's like a market-driven approach. I guess you're probably also doing partnerships. Are there other ways that you've seen that help to drive help to drive the adoption of APIs?
Yeah, so I think I'm trying to think what the right phrasing is, but it starts at home, so to speak. So in an enterprise, particularly a large enterprise, a Fortune 10 company like Ford, and you've seen this again, there's this whole sort of the public APIs are the tip of the iceberg. To use the old Daniel Jacobson metaphor, and so same is true at Ford and I think most OEMs, where a lot of the API and platform related work and low code, no code is happening, behind the firewall, internally, and this huge number of internal APIs that are powering both internal apps, but are apps that may be exposed internally, but are currently only consumed by our own products, right? So, the Ford Pass mobile app that I mentioned earlier, that's an entirely API-driven product that we've built for our customers. But again, it's your iOS or Android app that's sitting there on your phone, but it's making dozens of API calls back to our infrastructure. And then building on that behind the firewall, one of the things we've done in the last years at Ford is and this is part of what I think Darren was talking about at the API of the Docs conference that last year, was we stood up a new team called Platform Enablement with the sole focus of API-driven activities across the organization. So across Ford, so whether it's in the analytics group or the manufacturing group or the pure IT or the mobility group, trying to work with those various organizations to improve our API competency internally, right? So building our first unified API catalog, so a more modern, searchable, friendly API catalog that then in turn incorporates things like that we kind of take for granted, that you all take for granted, about having Swagger documents or open API specs for every API, right? Classifying the APIs, making that searchable and accessible internally. So we, APIcatalog.ford.com is available internally to anybody behind the firewall. And so we're building up that practice, automated API publishing. So it's sort of a CI/CD pipeline. So how do you scale that across teams, across the organization? Well, you need to automate that. So we have API publishing tools, and so those can work with whatever API gateways and other products that we're using to publish. Each team can use that, and that's API driven itself. So again, each team can bake it into their API pipeline, publish it to the API gateways, publish it to our API catalog, and then the other initiative that we took on that's been very fruitful is an API metrics program. So starting to do a more holistic job of measuring a lot of things around our APIs. Again, starting at home with behind the firewall of, both sort of metadata around how many APIs do we have, what types of APIs, things around the catalog itself, then more API usage metrics, right? Which, pulling data out of various sources. So different types of API gateways, different types of tools that we have behind the firewall, pulling that into a centralized dashboard and reporting system that all the API owners can use. So we can use both at a macro level, at a management level, but also each individual team has access to these metrics about API consumption, who's using the APIs, API calls, things like that. But then API performance, pulling tools from metrics from performance tools, and then building this loosely coupled internal sort of connectivity glue that says, oh, well, if I need to go find out what the logs are because I'm having an issue with this API, I can go over, the catalog can help me jump over there. Or who owns this API, right? Like what seems like a simple question, but it's like, it turns out to be harder when you have hundreds and hundreds of internal teams working on different types of APIs. So who would I go talk to about this? That kind of information in there, and then using that to iterate and make them better, right? So how are we going to make our APIs better? Right? How are we going to put together API standards and guidance? How are we going to help teams make their APIs more reliable and faster? How are we going to encourage more API reuse? So it's a crawl, walk, run philosophy, but now with a dedicated team to kind of federate that out across the organization.
And how have you gotten everybody to put their APIs in the catalog? Because I think that's one of the key issues I've seen in a lot of organizations is that there might be central catalog, but then sometimes people don't take the efforts to publish into the catalog.
Oh yes, that is I in my past lives I've seen that many a time, and so that's certainly one fix. One thing that helps that is it takes time, right? So it's never going to be 100%. You kind of have to accept it. It's always a work in progress. First of all, right? You gotta start to show the value. Like teams have to see why does it matter. So that's sort of a bit of the bottom up, like why should I care, right? So again, having metrics and that sort of additional value add helps, right? So then there's an incentive, a carrot, not just a stick. And then the other side is executive buy-in, right? So from the top down, from the CEO on down, the CIO, the executive leadership at Ford gets that this is important, right?
Yeah.
So I think that kind of executive level buy-in is super important, and then that trickles down from that perspective to help encourage and sort of drive, adoption of this over time.
I heard you talk about API catalog. This is something that I'm looking for, and I'm trying to discover if companies are doing this already. It's like, do you already have also kind of like an application or, all the ways that you can use an API? So I talked earlier about affordances, and this was Mike Amundsen's, like he's done a couple of presentations about affordances of APIs, like how people use them. Yeah. Do you have already a systematic way of cataloging how people are using your APIs? Do you capture that also?
Side note, Mike's new book is great, by the way. Right? I know you had him on, but I caught up with him recently, and the new book is great. So affordances. So we've set up our own internal style guide, and that's one piece of the puzzle. And again, that's evolving over time. Start off with the page. Again, don't over-engineer it, right? But the basics of just RESTful API design and some consistency around error handling and those sorts of things. And not all teams have adopted that. That's always going to be, I think, just one step at a time. And then we've also done a bit of tooling. So one thing that we've started to do there and think about API design is sort of a lighter touch of, and not like some terrible heavy-handed governance piece, but the ability to use an API linter. So we have a customized linting process. So when you go to publish your API through our pipeline, there's a linting step that either you can use it individually or as part of the publishing pipeline to then, against a set of sort of rules or sort of checks, whether it's sort of, again, RESTful API design or what your Swagger file, what's in there, your open API spec, what's in there, error handling. And then we've been building that up over time. So you have this linting process, so you can go through the linter, and that'll come back with, levels of sort of pass fail, right? And so again, a team can use that to improve the API over time and think about the quality of the API and the capabilities of the API, and then to use your word, the affordances of the API. What level are you going to do? What's the right level of granularity? I mean, that's the more subjective piece of API design. I think it's.
You have to understand. I come from a different angle. I'm a bioengineer by education, so I'm looking at this as an ecosystem, and I think I understand now. We probably have a different definition of affordances. So the thing I'm talking about is how to explain. Oh, and this is really difficult.
You mean like what it enables?
Yes. So, but it's what it enables, and then how is that instantiated into a user experience? So what I believe strongly is that APIs are like information highways. They are like the highways, like the network that we build out into our organizations to speed up the transfer of information. And then we need to build infrastructure on top of that to be able to really utilize it. And so one thing is like having the highways and be able to connect new stuff to it, which speeds up certain connections of information. But then there's also like, what kind of vehicles are you driving on those highways? And what kind of applications are you using to make use of that infrastructure that is there? And I think what I see happening is that like one part is how developers use the API network, but then the other part is then how do you simplify that for regular people? And one of the examples that I keep coming back to, because I think it was so radical the first time I saw it, is a customer of ours, KBC, Belgian bank. On their developer portal, they have something they call business solutions. And these are, so they have the APIs, like their usual stuff, but then they also have business solutions. And business solutions, they have something like one of the things that I thought was pretty brilliant. I don't know if it's like actually going to be a good business in the end, but they have QR codes that allow you to start up the insurance journey for your electric bike. So if you're a bicycle shop owner, you can go to their site, create one of these QR codes, and then in the shop, the bicycle owner can trigger an insurance or a loan journey using a QR code. And what I thought was brilliant was that they're using their API infrastructure, but in a way that the people that are using it don't need to be developers at all. They've instantiated the usage of that network and that affordance that is there in such a way that it becomes something that anybody can do, so that just regular business developers can use this developer power. And I think that going forward, like discovering what are the affordances of your network, like what are the things people could do, I think this is going to be the big differentiator. Is like how well is your organization equipped? So I think you're way ahead, like from the stories you're telling, like the system, like how systematic you've done your infrastructure for your APIs. There's a lot of really beautiful API thinking, and I think I think you're, with this API wave, you're way ahead. So I wanted to see if you're also already thinking about this piece, and it's very, very new.
So I think I have a better sense of sort of where you're coming from on that. I think there's a couple of pieces of that. Again, as we think about, as an auto manufacturer, thinking about the sort of the ecosystem that we play in, again, with retail customers and then commercial customers, but also the fact that how do you integrate it? How do you enable both? Again, you think about like the commercial side of this, a little bit closer to the example you were just giving, the sort of what problems a fleet owner is trying to solve.
Exactly.
That's a whole suite of problems that they're trying to solve, right? And that's why early on with Ford Commercial Solutions, that group, having APIs was so important, right, from the get-go, because it can't live on, the app can't live on its own. It's not going to be successful living on its own. You need to be able to get that data out, and then through those affordances and enablement, think about what are the types of solutions, and then growing that and then making those available is sort of partially, to some extent, your example there is also light bulbs for others to think about, like, oh, that gives me this new idea, right? Because it sort of takes, like when we started programmable web 15 years ago, one of the key things there was the mashup directory, back when people used the phrase mashups, which don't really get used anymore. But at the time, that was super important because it gave people like, oh, look, somebody's the cool combination of like crime data and maps in Chicago.
Exactly.
And I can like see this and like housing maps or whatever. So tons of mapping was in those days. But as it grew over time, people had more and more ideas, and then it fed on itself. It's like, oh, yeah, this gives me a great idea for this, and telephony and blah, blah, blah. So I think you'll start to see over time, in say the transportation space, more and more of this, right? Here's another example. I know we'll run out of time soon, but the other example is, think about, again, unless you're really kind of here closer to the industry itself, you won't realize that part of what's happening is this thing called V2X, which is vehicle to everything. So as your vehicle, within the infrastructure, your vehicle will be able to start to, over time, be able to talk to traffic lights. So traffic lights become connected, right? The highways become connected. The places in which you travel, we're starting to build connected corridors as experiments right now. In conjunction with cities and civic agencies, but your car will know that the light's turning from green to yellow to red, for example. What does that mean? Or you'll be able to talk to other cars, again, in a secure way, in a private way. You'll, again, think of all the safety implications and how much, I think that this is one of the things that also excites me about working at Ford, is that the company really believes in the power of this technology to make, save lives, right? To make your driving experience over time just safer, right? So whether it's that current generation and the next generation of driver assistance technology, but again, when you start to think more broadly about connected vehicles and what does that mean, there's a whole new realm of opportunities to make them, a safer experience, right? So that's another sort of angle of what it could enable.
Yeah, I think I almost feel like we should have another call or another like a follow-up about the mashups, because I would love to pick your brain about that part, like how that worked at programmable web, and if there's anything we can learn from that for the industry. Because I think just cataloging all the information, I think one of the key things I tell our customers is, don't just make, I call it a flea market. It's like an API marketplace with like all kinds of junk in it. Don't do that. Right. You have to organize it. You have to create boutique experiences where people can find the right experiences for the right person. And so I'd love to hear, maybe it's something that we can pick up if you're up for that, because I'd love to hear how you think about that, because you have all that prior experience. And then from the context of your business, are there like, you already talked about some of the initiatives, but like, how can we start organizing all of this information? How can we create like one interface for all the interfaces where you can go and find like all the mashups or all the apps or all the SDKs or all these different ways of using this information network, so that people can find what they need and find a shorter way to what they want to achieve. Because people don't, like Mehdi said this really interesting thing, people are not looking for APIs, they're looking for things they want to do with APIs.
Yep.
And I think that's
well, it's very true, right? It's absolutely true. So it is a good topic for another, because it's a broad topic. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
John, I've been pretty quiet in this. I was in the mapping space, and I had some work pointed in this direction a long time ago, and it's really exciting to see it all come together and what you're doing. I know you've got a hard stop, so that we have to wrap up, but it's very exciting, the kinds of things that you're talking about, very thought-provoking. Even if people, I think this is going to be interesting to all of our listeners, because it's going to spark all kinds of thinking about new capabilities that this is truly digital transformation. I'm thinking about my brother's 1920 something Model T.
Right.
There you go. What you're talking about now. Supposed to go for a drive this afternoon, and it's just an amazing transformation for a car company that has always been transforming the industry. So it's very exciting.
Yeah, and you should think about that, by the way. Yeah, software is eating your car. So next time you get into your car, another car, or taxi, just think about how it's just becoming more and more a piece of software. And I want to make one plug before we get off, which was we are hiring. Look, always, these days we're as part of that software enabling the industry, software engineers, developers, product managers, designers. Just Google on jobs, for careers, and you'll find some interesting work. So exciting! It's a cool place to be.
Very cool. Thank you for joining us, John, and thank you for having this conversation with us.
Yeah, likewise. It's been fun. Mm-hmm. We'll do it again.
Yeah, I'd love to. I want to pick up on that mashups. Now I don't know how. No, we were talking about the same thing. I would love to pick that up on the next time. Yep.
All right. Very good.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us.
Likewise. All right. See you.
Bye. See you.
And to our listeners, thank you so much for joining this episode. We hope you enjoyed it. Hope it provoked some thinking and gave you some insights that you can use. We hope to have John back and dig a little bit more. I think for me, it was just seeing kind of how big the field is that's being plowed, and it's very exciting. So let us know what you think about this episode. You can make comments at info@pronovix.com, and look forward to talking with you again. Thank you for listening to the API Resilience Podcast. If you liked what you heard, please follow us to hear our latest episodes on YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or Apple Podcasts. And if you have any comments or feedback you would like to share, please drop us an email at podcasts@pronovix.com. Until next time, we wish you well and hope you find success in all your endeavors.